What's up, guys? Okay, so I figured that's the fastest way to get in here. Today I'm going to go over something that's important to a lot of people. They want to answer some of the questions. I wrote down some of the questions that I would ask for anybody who's running any type of a program, or where did they come from, what makes you qualified, all the things that should be important to you if you're starting this program. Now, I don't always subscribe to the fact that you have to tell all of your story. I don't like hearing everybody's story, but some people can connect more with me knowing where I've been from, knowing what I've been through, where I come from, and maybe that'll help you connect as to why I believe everything is a choice. All right, let's start in on some questions I have here that I would ask if I was you. And feel free to reach out to me and send messages too, so I can know some of the thoughts that you have also. So, first one I would ask is, what makes you qualified to talk about making choices? It's a good question. It's a good question. So when I started writing out Everything is a Choice, I started researching different types of psychology to see, is this hold any weight? And there's patterns in many things. And each one of these patterns has made it so that it gives me more insight on our ability to see that everything has choices built into it. And you're going to see in a lot of further videos exactly how I apply those and how it's helped many people apply them also. So I come from lower middle class family, broken homes. Parents split. I know what it's like to have to go through it with a single parent. I know that. My dad came from an extremely abusive household. My uncle, who's somebody I confide in often, he says, you don't understand, is your dad had it the hardest out of all of us, and we came from a world that could only be compared to as Sparta. So physical abuse, mental abuse, the attacks were vicious. And my dad carried that over as me being the firstborn son was the only thing that he knew how to deal with situations that weren't going his way. With that, it did mean that if anything didn't go right, there was a lot of difficult things I had to go through when he would be very physical and, let's just say, way over the top on certain ways you should handle things. I'm not going to get into the details of the types of abuse that it was, because it's not necessarily the same for all of us. So yes, I know what some really, really extreme versions of things, and I'm not talking about a spanking. So for those of you who are wondering, have I gone through battles? Yes, I grew up in a very tough environment. Our neighborhood itself was low end as far as poverty-wise. We weren't very wealthy. So getting in fist fights and getting into trouble was something that was normal for us. The home life was not very nurturing. My dad didn't know how to connect. And my mom was also being broken down from that abuse being carried over into her. Because of that, when I was around 5th grade, so I'm 10 years old, my mom had an emotional break and she ended up having to leave because she was going through her extremes. My dad, he shut down and became borderline sociopathic for a few years. This meant he had no regret, no remorse, no connection, no anything. This left us, me and my brother and sister at the time, literally just grasping at straws to any family members or anybody who could connect. So we understood abandonment. We understood abuse. We understood neglect. We understood not feeling loved or feeling appreciated, because my mom was gone for a long time, like over a year and a half before I was able to see her again. All of that connection was taken away because my dad was in a dark place and blocked all of that. My mom was in a dark place and couldn't find a way to connect. And there was a lot of growth they had to go through. So we understood, especially I understood, where I had to go through an emotional shutdown. And that emotional shutdown was my defense mechanism. And now I'm sure almost anybody watching this has created defense mechanisms for whatever insecurities that they would have had, whether it be self-doubt or fear or excuses that we end up giving ourselves to make it so we can't do our best. We create these different thoughts based on what we've been through, which is part of our problem too, is we don't have enough information to change that perspective. So my defense mechanism was to shut it down. And for a number of years, I probably had more in common with a robot than I do a person. Some of you can relate. Now, also being a guy, it wasn't very appreciated to be emotional as it was. So it was looked upon as weakness. It was treated as pathetic or shunned or not loved. So the tough part about that was being able to know what emotions were acceptable and not acceptable. And my uncle explained it really well. He said it was an interesting way that we grew up. He said that if you were happy and being loud and laughing and all these things, that was unacceptable and keep it the fuck down. If you were sad or crying, that was unacceptable. And I'll give you a fucking reason to cry. It was seen as weakness. But if you were angry is okay. Because I'm angry too. So if you're angry and I'm angry, that's just fine. And you grow up with this angry and hard mentality. You're not allowed to show emotion. You're not allowed to show sadness. You shouldn't show happiness. You can't show pride. You can't show any of those things because it's hurt or taken away. That whenever you would open up or whenever you would share, it was turned into a weapon against you. Anything that was a shortcoming or a downfall was quickly exploited. Anything that you would do to challenge the narratives around you was very quickly attacked and told how you're a bullshit artist or you're fake or you're just trying to scam or you're just like, it was always, nothing was ever good enough. So when people say, I know what it's like to come from a world like this, and that was also on top of the physical abuse and the things that were not punishment. This was way beyond punishment. There's a lot you have to go through to say, where can you start to make the choices to take your power back? Now, coming from that environment, and the reason I bring that environment up is because I know a lot of people that we've worked with have come from very, very hard environments. And coming from that type of world makes it so that it's almost impossible to think that there's a different version of what you can have. To even dream seems impossible. Like you're setting yourself up for failure from the start. Being able to take myself from a world like that and be able to see there's hope and be able to work toward a dream is one of the biggest reasons, if I can say I can turn it around from this. A world where I'm not supposed to see anything that would be beautiful or positive or even like a world without color. And then be able to dream in Technicolor and try and create a world outside of that. I hope that my qualifications would show that I know what it's like to be there and then move forward and be able to find a way to believe in yourself again. Next question. Have you ever been through hell and back? Now, because of the way that I grew up, I would say that I know what it's like for a good baseline of really difficult things to go through. Now, one of the ones that I do have a hard time connecting with is everything from physical to emotional abuse, abandonment, self-doubt, fear. I understand all of those ones. I don't claim to have felt or understood the same thing as sexual abuse. I fortunately didn't have to go through that aspect of it, but I know what pain is, and I know what it's like to have to fight out of your own personal hell. The hell that's inside of here and inside of here that stops you from believing that you're worth anything. So, is my story ever going to be the same as anybody else's? No. And nobody's story is the same as mine. But can I relate to what it's like to have a fucking summer home in hell? Yeah. And so I know what it's like to have to claw your way out of the muck. And that's something that I think that many people who have gone through really tough times will find a connection with that to say, this isn't a privileged person. I didn't come from a very, very wealthy family. I didn't come from good means. I didn't come from love and nurture. I didn't come from safety and security. I came from hard work, warrior mentality, and not being really good enough at anything. Highly mistreated and never really appreciated. And I wanted to do something about that world, so we built our own. And that's something that you can do too. Next question. What have you had to face for fear and self-doubt? I guess with fear and self-doubt, being constantly afraid of being hurt when I was a child does change your perspective. And I think that that's something that I've learned also when you're working with people, is that people who have been through really, really tough things have found a way to be able to develop a different type of perspective towards problems. So someone who's been through really difficult things will look at something that may potentially be very stressful and go, I've been through far worse than this, bring this on. And then some people who haven't gone through as much would find a simple thing like ruining a pair of shoes or losing your car keys as like the world's over, or a breakup. Things that just go forward and move on. You'll find that aren't as big of a deal, but if it's your first time or something happens that you feel should have been in your control, even if it wasn't, you'll have anxiety and fear and stress. So growing up in the world that I grew up in, when there's no fear of being hurt because you know you're going to be hurt, so what's there to be afraid of? It changes the way that you look at things. And I almost call it like a soldier mentality. And a lot of men that I talk to can connect with the idea of what I call growing up in Sparta. When you grow up in Sparta, you're taught to fight, you're taught anger, you're taught focus, you're taught to be as strong as you possibly can to be able to handle all of the hardships you're going to go through. But you're also never taught any self-worth, that you're special, you're unique, or you're worth anything more than being a frontline soldier. Now, being a soldier, you may be fearless, but your purpose is not to be able to think. Your purpose is not to grow. Your purpose is not to develop. Your purpose is to go and fight until you die. So you can't be afraid of death. So I found myself overcoming a lot of fear. I have no fear of public speaking. I have no fear of conflict. I have no fear of death. These are things that I've come to terms with. Now, when it comes to self-doubt, well, there was no point of me having any self-assurance, self-confidence, because it didn't matter. It was worthless. I was a half-ass. I was not good enough. I was never meant to be. And what would make it so anybody would listen to someone like me? And I think a lot of you have run into self-doubt, because self-doubt is the meanest asshole you probably know. It's the things that you say to yourself inside your head that stop you from feeling good enough. And self-doubt is an interesting one, because self-doubt masks itself as your friend. Self-doubt says things like, oh, you want to start a business? Are you sure that's a good idea? You've done things in the past that didn't work out. You really want to fail like that? I think we should stay safe. And those weird thoughts like that we have that stop us from our dreams make up a reality or make us question things that are a good idea, that are what you're meant to do. And so every day I've had to struggle against self-doubt. Every day I have to write down, like, overcoming my own self-image of what it is that I'm supposed to be doing in this world to make it in any way a better place. And so self-doubt, is my biggest crutch. Not as much fear. And so it's easy to understand fear for me, but it's harder with self-doubt. And for you, it may be different. You maybe have your entire belief system built on fear, and mine was built on doubt. And this is something that we work through together. Next question. All right. What was your rock bottom? What changed everything? All right. So based on my upbringing, I was raised to be a rage monster. I grew up in an environment where my dad was a quick to anger kind of guy, to say it kindly. So I'll give you an example. My dad, my stepmom, and her mom are sitting down there watching TV. Now, they come from a place where they just do shit. So my stepmom's mom, so I guess my step-grandma, she just grabs the remote control at our house and changes the channel. Maybe not the biggest deal in the world, but my dad was watching that show. And let's just say, he did not like that one bit. So he looks at her calmly and says, change that back. She's like, no, I don't want to watch that. I want to watch something else. A normal person may have a conversation about the value and what they wanted to watch, or maybe it's disrespectful in my own place. My dad had a coffee cup that he was holding while he was there. He said, oh, okay. So he put his food down, he grabbed his coffee cup and threw it right through the TV screen, and he says, watch whatever you want. And then just walked out of the room. This is the idea of the type of temperament that I grew up with. And so when you grow up in Sparta, destroying things or attacking first just makes tactical sense, because you can bet that there's no more channel changing after that day. So when you grow up in an environment where you hit first, or you attack first, or you break things first, and that's the first thing that you do, it goes right into a violent action, or it goes right into some sort of a dig or a scream. When I was in a relationship, in that relationship, she was a great person. She's a very good person, way better than I was. I was going through so many mental things that she was just above me, as far as she was ahead of me, as far as maturity, the type of person she was. And I didn't appreciate that because I didn't know how to appreciate anything. And I remember there was one night we were sitting in front of the house, and we were just sitting in the car, and we got into a conversation. Truthfully, I don't fully remember what the argument was about, but we were in an argument about something. And my crazy brain, when you're angry, says to hit things. Now, don't worry, I didn't hit her, but I got upset and I punched my car window out. And if you've ever hit a car window, they're very hard. And I smashed this car window out, glass flies everywhere, all over the place. Her, reacting like a normal human, goes, oh God, I can't even be in a car with somebody who does this. She gets out and she's crying. She's walking around the car into the front of the house, and I just see her tears just pouring down. I get out of the car and I'm standing in a pile of glass, just glass all over the ground. And my arm is all cut up because I'm an idiot and I just punched through a window. So my arm's got blood pouring down my arm. Standing in just a shimmering glass-covered ground with blood pouring down my arm, tears pouring out of her face, and I had an introspective moment. Is this the kind of person that I want to be? And I was like looking at just the carnage that I have. Like, this is what I've been taught my entire life. You attack first, you break something, you make it a point. Anger is acceptable. Understanding and calmness and stillness and listening, that's for the weak people. I will dominate you. In that moment, I looked at what I was trained to be, and what I was taught to be. And I said, I don't want to be this guy anymore. And so it's at that time that I decide I need to make a conscious change of what kind of person I'm going to be from now on. That was a tough moment in that, because everything I've ever known was going against who I was. And so I started associating myself with groups of people who were trying to improve, trying to do better, reading more, growing, starting their own businesses, whatever it may be. And so at that moment, in that 1 second, everything that I knew for almost 20 years, everything that I knew had changed. I knew that I couldn't continue this path anymore. I knew that I couldn't be that way. I know a lot of people have that moment for a lot of things. It could be eating. It could be working out. It could be other types of self-care. It could be habits that you have. It could be something that needs to change, and you've always been afraid of what that identity shift would be. there comes a point where you can't continue moving forward in that direction. And the kind of man that I was going to be if I continued being a hot-headed asshole was not the kind of man that I wanted to be. So yeah, I know what it's like to change everything. I know what it's like to be abandoned. I know what it's like to be hurt. I know what it's like to be put down. I know what it's like to have no one believe in you. I know what it's like to hurt others. I know what it's like. And I believe that everything is a choice up to a point. All of our adult lives, even up into your teenage lives, you make decisions that matter. And I believe that all of our decisions are connected to create our lives the way that they've gone. We need to be able to look back at that and look at those monumental moments and realize that I don't want to repeat these mistakes over and over again. I need to be aware of what I'm supposed to learn from these things that happened. Now, some of the more difficult things to get over is things when you're a child and bad things have happened to you. And I'm not claiming that that was a choice. I am claiming that these are situations that have happened. There are ways to find strength in yourself from it, but I don't claim to be an expert on dealing with childhood traumas or abuses that are way over the top. But I do know as an adult, you do get to choose now how you're going to handle things, what you're going to do from this day forward, and what does your rock bottom look like? Do you have to wait for it to all come crashing down or until you punch through a window and you're bleeding to make a choice to do something different? I believe every moment that we live, if you practice awareness and you practice being able to look inside yourself and look at all the things around you, the more that you practice, the more that you'll see the choices are everywhere. The choices are in all the things around you. They're in everything you decide to do. Every single thing you eat or drink, every single thing that you choose to do to treat somebody a certain way, every way you handle something. It's in everything. Everything is a choice. Now, I hope a little bit of my story resonates with you. If there's anything in this that you can connect with to go, okay, this guy's been through some shit just like me. I'll listen to what he has to say. I hope this was helpful. So we're going to start Awareness Week. Awareness is the number one most important thing that we have to have. Not only internally as to why do we feel what we feel or why do I do the things that I do, but also paying attention externally. Understanding that the things around you also are filled with choices. And it gives you your power to understand that you can control your environment around you too. So let's get started with week 1. Thank you guys for watching this. If you made it to the end of this, I really truly appreciate you going on this wild journey with us and spending the time with me to kind of listen to my story before I get to hear yours. All right, I'm out of here.